Thio Chin Loo, Senior Currency Analyst at BNP Paribas, joining us from Singapore this morning. Chin Loo, good to have you back on the program. First off, let me get your reaction to what you're seeing in the dollar-yen cross. Look at that, some big weakness this morning.
Yeah, I think there is still that flight to safety, and the yen and the Swiss franc are still benefiting. But having said that, I think the markets are positioned short the US dollar into this very troubled US debt ceiling talks. So at this point in time, I think there is some dollar short covering going through, and that's why in general we're seeing the dollar a little bit more well bid, particularly against the Aussie this morning.
Yeah, that is very interesting, isn't it? Again, some more strength for the Australian dollar. Also, the Kiwi dollar. So would you say, in some ways, the carry trade is still on?
Well, I think it's not just carry, but investors are clearly looking for carry as well as safety. And with these two combined, the Aussie dollar is a fairly good bet because the recent RBA minutes sounded that the RBA isn't quite yet, as dovish as some market players had anticipated. And the Australian economy, which latches on to Chinese growth quite strongly, should do quite well, with China still not showing significant signs of a slowdown. So I think those two combined and the high yield, makes the Australian dollar a fairly good bet against the greenback.
That's right. And don't forget, we have the RBNZ hinting that it looks like they may have to raise rates in the future to tame inflation. Let me ask you also about the CPI figures this one that we got from South Korea. Inflation looks to be still impacting the region as a whole. So what about, I guess, Asian currencies vis-a-vis the U.S. greenback, the dollar itself?
Well, I think Asian currencies are still likely to stay firm against the US dollar, but in the short term, markets are positioned for a short dollar-Asian trade. So I think given the sort of signs of a near-term liquidity squeeze in the US dollar, the dollar could get a bounce against Asian currencies. As far as dollar-won is concerned, there's been a lot of reports that the BOK is intervening to support dollar at about the 10.50 level. So there's a very firm floor for dollar-won there. But clearly, as you said in the inflation numbers for Korea, they are looking fairly buoyant, and the Bank of Korea as well, in its recent comments as well as minutes, said that the risk of inflation staying structured and elevated remains quite high. So we do think that is a door opener in terms of rate hikes for Bank of Korea, and that may be one factor that could as well create some volatility in Korean bond markets, particularly in stocks, and the won should still stay above the 10.50 mark this week.
Okay, well, let me talk to you about, I guess, the dollar going into the rest of this year, because we've seen it basically weakening by 5%. So what's the outlook right now? What's the best bet in the currency markets? Because take a look at the Swiss franc hitting yet another record high versus the U.S. dollar. Who would have thought just 6 months ago that would happen?
Well, clearly, I think this, the scale and speed of the dollar's collapse against major currencies, particularly against Asian currencies, was a little bit of a surprise. I think most U.S. analysts did expect the U.S. to come to its senses and pass its debt ceiling, way before the 2nd of August deadline, but it hasn't occurred. So I think the market is doing a repricing of downgrade risks in the U.S. and not just downgrade to double A, but potential downgrade to selective default. So if that were to occur, certainly I think the the medium to longer term fortunes for the US dollar remains very bearish, not least against Asian currencies where there are spread compression, i.e. Asian credits are being upgraded, not least, for example, in Indonesia, where the country could get upgraded to investment grade status.
Okay, Chin Loo, let me just interrupt you. I just really want to wrap this all up by asking you what the best bet is in the currency markets. Quickly, 30 seconds here.
Well, we still like to be long Asian currencies. I think that has proven to be a very good trade. I think the ones that have outperformed are surprisingly some of the ASEAN currencies. So the Sing dollar is doing very well. The Malaysian Ringgit is doing very well. Even the Indonesian Rupiah with its high yield appeal. So I would still stick with those trades. I think that would come one that would come into surprise with the Korean won because of the BOK rate hike not being over yet, and investments into the Korean asset space looks to be fairly strong.
All right, Chin Loo, thanks for your time today. Thio Chin Loo of BNP Paribas joining us from Singapore this morning.